Hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to Silverstone for the 5th round of the 2013 International GT Open. We're here on the 5.8 kilometre Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. 70 minutes of racing await us in this, the 9th race of the season, which takes us just past the halfway point. My name is Ben Evans. I'm here in the commentary box at Silverstone on a sweltering July day, temperature well above 30 degrees, and with 27 supercars lined up on the grid, we are in for a real treat. So a very, very warm welcome to the Buckinghamshire-Northamptonshire border for the first ever visit of the International GT Open to Silverstone. The breeze has stilled, the sun is beating down, and there is a large crowd here to enjoy the action. They've been pouring into the circuit since 9 o'clock this morning, ready to enjoy a taste of some of the very, very finest GT racing you can find. If you're new to the International GT Open, to explain, there are two classes. There is the Super GT class, which is for the cars which are broadly speaking GT2 cars, and the GTS class, which is for cars which are broadly speaking GT3 cars. Very, very keenly contested qualifying session this morning, which went in favour of the championship leader in the Valour course Ferrari, Andrea Montermini, driver who has raced at Silverstone extensively in the past, but this is actually his first visit to the new configuration of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, which was completed for the 2010 season. Valour course Ferrari, which he shares with Luca Filippi, but it's Montermini who leads the championship single-handedly, because Filippi missed one of the races at Portimao earlier on in the season. Alongside the Valour course Ferrari on the front row of the grid is the V8 Racing Corvette of Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. They are currently sharing third in the championship standings. Ramos and Pastorelli, 2 wins to their credit already this season, coming at Portimao, and then in the first race last time out at Jerez, the thumbs up from Portuguese driver Miguel Ramos. Third on the grid, another of the Super GT cars and another of the V8 Racing Corvette, Diederik Stuyt, the former Dutch supercar champion, who has been getting better and better as the season has gone by. The first of the GTS cars and fourth on the grid is the very experienced German driver Marco Seefried in the third outing this season for the Rinaldi Racing Porsche. And again, that car has been getting better and better, and Seefried really showing his potential and experience to line that car up fourth on the grid. Pipping to GTS pole, the ex-Jordan Formula 1 racer, Giorgio Pantano, the first of the Bitec Racing McLarens, lining up in fifth. And they've had all sorts of problems in testing and practice over the past couple of days. An accident, Pantano's co-driver Rafael Suzuki, amongst other things. Sharing the third row with Pantano is his Bitec Racing teammate Chris van der Drift, the New Zealander who shares the car with Luis Razia, giving the thumbs up. The Bitec team have been getting increasingly competitive as the season has gone by, as has Michael Lyons in the AF Course Ferrari. Lyons, a BRDC member, British Racing Drivers Club based here at Silverstone, wanted to perform well this weekend, and thus far in qualifying has gone extremely well, as did Roman Mavlanov in the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari. A driver who you should absolutely not discount Ziza Tutumlu in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. Double thumbs up from Tutumlu. And last man, Jerez, finally got the results that his pace has been deserving. Alvaro Barber, a driver who knows Silverstone very well from his days racing here in Formula Renault 3.5. New entrant for this weekend, the Team LNT Ginetta of Mike Simpson, which he shares with the chairman of Ginetta Cars, Lawrence Tomlinson. They are joined on the 6th row by another all-new entry for this weekend, the Team Rhinos Lippert Motorsport Lamborghini. Next up, 13th on the grid, Miguel Toro, victorious last time out in the Seyfarth Mercedes. Toro and Renke van der Zande scoring the win at Jerez almost a month ago now. So let's have a look then at the starting grid in full. Andrea Montermini and Miguel Ramos sharing the front row of the grid. Row 2 is Diedrich Schutthoff and Marco Seefried. Row 3 is all Bitec Racing with Giorgio Pantano and Chris van der Drift. It's an all Ferrari. Row 4, Michael Lyons and Roman Vlanov. Row 5 continues the enduring sports car battle between Porsche and Ferrari, Isaac Tutumlu and Alvaro Barber. Row 6 is Mike Simpson and Fabio Hamprecht. Row 7, Miguel Toril and the experienced Italian Lorenzo Bontempelli. Row 8 is Duncan Cameron, another newcomer for this weekend, very experienced Sean Balfe. Row 9, Alexander Taukanitsa and Kenneth Heyer. Row 10 is Johnny Lawson and Jackie Camp. Row 11, the third of the Mercedes S-Leses, another new entrant, Mario Caciuta and Freddie Kramer. Row 12, Rastislav Maliv and Emilio De Guida. And then completing the field is Mario Cordoni and Claudio Sadanovic, which means that unfortunately we have lost since qualifying. They, of course, Ferrari of Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin, who should have been there but aren't. The cars on the formation lap now. As ever, the race gets underway with a rolling start in the International GT Open. 70 minutes await us. There is a mandatory pit stop which comes between 40 and 60% race distance. That means between when we are 28 minutes into the race and when we are 42 minutes into the race, the drivers must come into the pits for a minimum of 70 seconds, and in all cases make their driver change. The way that performance is equalised in the International GT Open is not through success ballast, but rather additional pit stop time. And so the pole-sitting car of Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi must spend an additional 45 seconds in the pits beyond that 70-second mandatory minimum. The car they share the front row with, Castrelli and Miguel Ramos, they must spend an additional 30 seconds in the pits, and then the third-place car, Diedrich Schutthoff and Bert Longim, well, for them it's an extra 15 seconds. So that is a dynamic to watch for as the race progresses. The cars making a magnificent sight on this formation. That one of the longest circuits on the calendar, the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, the longest permanent circuit in the UK, 3.6 miles as the pack head along the Grand Prix straight past the Wing Pits complex, which is used for the Formula 1 Grand Prix, but actually very few other events, because this weekend we're using the original Grand Prix pit straight here at Silverstone. The paddock, as ever in the GT Open, is wide open for the fans. It's been wonderful this morning to see so many fans in the pit area looking to meet the drivers, getting the autograph books signed up, and this being such a friendly championship, the drivers all too happy to oblige, being very, very friendly as well. Lots of instances of the teams inviting spectators into the garages for a closer look, and that really is what it is all about. Cars then coming out of the loop through Aintree Corner and down the Wellington Straight. They're beginning to form up in side-by-side formation. They'll then head through Brooklands, long left-hander, one of the best overtaking opportunities here on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and then around the right-hander at Luffield, through Woodcote, and then the race about to get underway. 70 minutes of action ahead of us. This, the 9th race, the 2013 International GT Open. Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi have not yet been off the overall race podium. Will they be able to carry that run through here at Silverstone as the pack form up side by side? It's the responsibility of Andrea Montermini to pace the pack to the line as the lights about to flash green and we go racing. now here at Silverstone, away we go as they sprint towards Copse Corner for the first time. And it is the Villorba course Ferrari of Andrea Montermini who leads the way. Second place, Miguel Ramos. Third place, Diedrich Schittoff. And in fourth, the bright green Rinaldi Racing Porsche of the GTS class leader, Marco Seefried. So they're almost, as they qualified, at least amongst the top few positions. But we see a change for fifth because Chris van der Drift is able to jump clear of teammate Giorgio Pantano further back. They're all getting their arms out and elbows out, as well as Michael Lyons able to squeeze past Roman Mavlanov. Then it's Isaac Tutumlu, and he is just clear of Alvaro Barber as the field sprint down the hangar straight for the first time. Already Andrea Montermini has opened up over a second's advantage on Miguel Ramos as Giorgio Pantano looks to make the move on van der Drift, and van der Drift in turn challenging to the inside of Marco Seefried in the bright green Rinaldi Racing Porsche, and that leaves Pantano vulnerable to attack from Michael Lyons. Lyons, who knows this place very, very well for his exploits both in the British GT Championship and also in a variety of historic machinery. Lyons, though, in turn being pressurised by Roman Mavlanov in the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari. Mavlanov, graduate from single-seaters, the Formula Renault 2-litre Euro Cup last season. He is then chased by Alvaro Barber, and then it's Mike Simpson in the Ginetta. Lorenzo Bontempelli in the Ferrari, also busy defending from Fabian Hambrecht. We do see, in fact, the number 21 Ferrari out on track and carving its way through. That's Duncan Cameron. Duncan Cameron is there, which is very reassuring to see. And when that car goes into the hands of Matt Griffin a little bit later on, then that is a car we can expect to see charging up the order. In the meantime, though, through Brooklands at the end of the first lap of the race, it's Andrea Montermini who is pulling away from Miguel Ramos and Diedrich Schittoff. And then we've got the superb battle forming up behind for the GTS runners, headed by Marco Seefried, then van der Drift, Pantano and Michael Lyons. Isaac Tutumlu coming under a little bit of pressure from the Lamborghini as well of Fabian Hambrecht through Copse Corner. And now Marco Seefried is beginning to think about asking some questions of Diedrich Schittoff in the Rinaldi Racing Porsche as Mike Simpson looks to challenge Alvaro Barber into maggots, and that would be very, very brave if Simpson was to try and get through. He can't quite do it. Simpson had a scary moment at this section of the circuit in qualifying this morning when a wheel broke on the Ginetta, pitching him off the road, but no concerns there for Simpson. He was saying after qualifying, well, they'll take the wheel back to the Ginetta factory and see what went wrong, but for now they'll just bolt a new one on and get him out in the race. As charging down hangar straight come the pack, and they make a wonderful sight. Sean Balfe, headlights ablaze, looking to try and gain a little bit of ground over Vladislav Maliv in the second of the SMP Ferraris as Michael Lyons gains the place, moves past Giorgio Pantano at Vale. Pantano, though, draws alongside through Club Corner. He's got the inside line and repasses Michael Lyons, who runs out so far wide. He's almost another county there as he rejoins, still tries to go wheel to wheel with Giorgio Pantano. Pantano, I think, raced here most recently in the Euro Cup McGann Trophy as Mike Simpson continues his pressure of Alvaro Barber. For many of the British drivers, they have a slight advantage because we've already had a round of the British GT Championship on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit this year, so this is a track the drivers know very well as this lovely battle amongst the GTS runners begins to form up. All the while, though, Andrea Montermini trying to pull clear of Miguel Ramos. And we've got the fight for third. It's the big Corvette, number 7, Diedrich Schittoff. He's being pressurised by Marco Seefried in the Rinaldi Porsche, car that has just got faster and faster with each and every round it's competed in. Seefried very, very precise on the racing line, looking to try and close up onto the tail of Diedrich Schittoff. They are, though, in different classes. The Corvette in the Super GT class, the Rinaldi Porsche leading the GTS class by about a third of the length of the pit straight from Chris van der Drift in the first, the Bitech Racing McLarens. There's van der Drift, and for this weekend it's new colour scheme. Van der Drift's the bright red front of the car, Pantano the bright yellow. Real battle, though, is the one that's forming up for 8th place. It's between the Russian flag liveried Russian Bears Ferrari of Roman Mavlanov. Then we've got the Ombra Racing Ferrari of Alvaro Barber, and he is being chased by the Team LNT Ginetta of Mike Simpson. And they have also got Lorenzo Bontempelli beginning to loom ever larger in their mirrors. Fight for third heads through Stowe. as a problem for Isaac Tutumlu in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. And that is wretched luck for Tutumlu, because if there wasn't bad luck, there'd be no luck at all for Tutumlu, because he has been on the pace throughout the course of the season, but there is always something that goes wrong, as we've had a real sort out in the fight for 8th position, because Roman Mavlanov finds himself shuffled to 10th. It's now Alvaro Barber who goes 8th. Mike Simpson is 9th. Mavlanov in 10th, and he may become 11th very, very quickly, because he has got Lorenzo Bontempelli closing onto his tail. That's the bright red Ferrari, the Kessel Racing car, number 51. Through Farm, they can't hit the braking zone into Village. The Bitech Racing McLarens continues to do battle as Pantano all over the tail of teammate Vanderdrift. Both of them very, very quick former single-seat racers who've seamlessly made the transition into GT racing. And they are being hassled by another driver who has got considerable single-seat pedigree, Michael Lyons, but more in historic single-seaters, actually a race winner this year in Formula One, the historic Formula One Championship at Brands Hatch, as the fight for third gets ever closer. Marco Seefried knows exactly where to use the strengths of the Rinaldi Porsche, because this is the beauty of multi-mark GT racing. The Chevrolet Corvette is very, very strong in a straight line. Through the corners, it's a little bit leery, whereas the Porsche has got such inherent mechanical grip. It's got enormous amounts of traction through the corners, but maybe gives away a little bit on the straights to the Corvette. And that's why we're seeing the gaps seesawing and yo-yoing through the course of the lap. Again, through Kopp's corner, Mavlanov runs wide. That means that he loses a little bit of ground to the multicoloured Ginetta, and you really don't know where to look for the battles. This is the fight for 5th in the race overall and 2nd in the GTS class. It's the two Bitech Racing McLarens of Chris Vanderdrift, the red bonnet, Pantano, Giorgio Pantano, the yellow bonnet, and then Michael Lyons in the AF Course Ferrari. Then we've got that gap back to the fight for 8th place, which is 4 cars strong. It's the fight for 5th. They hit the brakes into the right-hander at Stowe. They all use the curb, all kick up a little bit of a dust screen for the rival behind. And once asked Adam Carroll whether or not these dust screens were deliberate when they went across the curbs and kicked up the dust, and this absolutely, because you just can maybe distract the driver immediately behind you. And so Michael Lyons has to pick his way through the Merkers again. They all run very, very wide over the curbs across the AstroTurf on the exit of Club Corner. It doesn't really delay them along the Grand Prix straight, then through Abbey and Farm into the heavy braking zone for Village. We're going to see Pantano looking to challenge. No, we're not. Fighting for third, work through the loop. And Giorgio Pantano, though, swarmy on the tail of Chris Vanderdrift, trying to force the error from the former International Formula Master champion, Chris Vanderdrift. Giorgio Pantano, as we said earlier, made it to Formula One, but Jordan also raced in IndyCar as well, briefly alongside his now increasingly impressive career in GT racing, as he looks to the inside of Vanderdrift and he's trying to force the gap there. And the Bitech Racing team on the pit wall, I'm sure, be on the radio saying, whatever you do not take yourselves off, because that was getting all a little bit too close. Inter-team rivalry is great, particularly if it's friendly, like it is in the Bitech squad. But what you don't want to see is your cars being pitched off the road. As Luis Razzia watches on anxiously from the pit wall, as does Rafael Suzuki. It's Razzia who takes over from Vanderdrift, Rafael Suzuki from Giorgio Pantano. And the pair of them have got to be careful here, because as they slow themselves down, it means Michael Lyons is able to stay with them with ease, but it also is allowing Alvaro Barber in the Ombra Racing Ferrari to catch up to this train, and Marco Seefried in the lead of the GTS class to disappear off into the distance. Well, our timing screen, not unsurprisingly, is telling us that the first of what I suspect will be many track limits flags now being displayed to the drivers, and the prize for first track limits flag of the day goes to Vladislav Maliv as Pantano looks to challenge Vanderdrift into Stowe Corner. Let's see if he was able to make it through. He couldn't quite do it. Vanderdrift able to cover the inside line on the brakes. And this battle now evolving into one between two McLarens, two Ferraris, and then the Ginetta as well. All the while, though, it's Chris Vanderdrift who holds the advantage from Giorgio Pantano. Slight gap back to Michael Lyons, with Alvaro Barber looking increasingly impressive on his tail as Pantano makes the error. He gets the car porpoising ever so slightly awkwardly on the curbs, and he knows he has to defend from Lyons, who thinks about challenging into Abbey. You can't really go too wide there in a GT car. But Lyons asking all the right questions now. Giorgio Pantano, who covers the inside line. They hit the brakes very, very hard into Village. Lyons runs out wide. That could be the opening for Alvaro Barber and Mike Simpson as well. Let's not discount Simpson in the Ginetta as he jinks the inside of Alvaro Barber at the loop and draws alongside. He's going to go through by the time they arrive at Aintree Corner. And that's the place gained. 8th position then for Mike Simpson as we hit the 10-minute mark in this race. Still Andrea Montermini who leads the way in the Villorba Course Ferrari. He's now 3.5 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette. In 3rd place is the second V8 Corvettes, and that's Diedrich Schitthoff. He still holds off the GTS class leader Marco Seefried in the Rinaldi Porsche. Then we've got this fight between the Biotech McLarens. Let's have another look at Mike Simpson's move and Alvaro Barber. And Simpson just taking the tight line through the loop. No way that Barber could close the door. And so he gets pushed down the order. It's now Mike Simpson, who's in sprightly form here, who takes the challenge to Michael Lyons, who again runs incredibly wide at Copse Corner. And they're going to have to be careful here because they were given a very strict warning in the driver's briefing last night that if you consistently run wide, and that means all 4 wheels across the white line at the edge of the circuit, then you will be looking at possibly incurring a penalty. And the last thing you want to be doing is incurring a stop-go penalty or an additional time penalty to race this early in proceedings. It's Michael Lyons in the AF Course Ferrari. It's the red car with then the Italian flag livery, busy defending from the multicoloured Team LNT Ginetta of Mike Simpson and Alvaro Barber. We're racing Ferrari 458, closing in to the tail of Simpson. They all concertina up on the brakes through Vale and then accelerate out of Club Corner. Again, they all run slightly wide, and just behind at the back of the shot you can see a good battle as well, beginning to emerge for 10th position between Roman Mavlanov and Lorenzo Bontempelli. Have a replay of dramas. Ooh, and that is very close. Vladislav Miliv slewing across the road at Chapel Curve, one of the fastest acceleration points on the circuit, and he can count himself fortunate to have been avoided. Unfortunately, it's going to have cost him a lot of places as Lorenzo Bontempelli tries to line up a move on Roman Mavlanov, but also Alvaro Barber had a superb run on Mike Simpson as they came out of Aintree Corner, and Barber just shows himself in Simpson's mirrors. He's not able to reclaim that 8th position that he believes is rightfully his. And all the while, they're still coming onto the tail of Michael Lyons. And Lyons is not really pulling away from this group, despite the fact he's not being embroiled in this battle. He's just allowed the 2 Biotech Racing McLarens to spear up the road. It's really not been a good lap for Vladislav Miliv. That's his 2nd spin, this time at Vale, as he heads across the road in the face of Freddie Kramer and Mario Plasciuta. So that is going to slip him all the way down to something like 23rd position. No such concerns, though, for the race leader, Andrea Montermini, the former Formula 1 racer for the Simtech Pacific 40 course racing teams. Also raced in IndyCar A1 GP en route to an incredibly successful career in GT racing. He pilots the Villorba Course Ferrari, which has as yet this season not finished outside the overall race top 3. He leads the championship commandingly, Andrea Montermini. He's 43 points clear of Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos, who are his nearest rivals. And the way things currently are, Miguel Ramos and Pastorelli may well give away points. However, this is when we have to start considering the pit stop handicap time, because Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi in the race-leading Ferrari, they must spend an additional 15 seconds in the pits in comparison to Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli, and that is why Andrea Montermini has had to take the pace out like a frightened hare here, because he really needs quite a good buffer to hand over to Luca Filippi, because Luca Filippi and Nicky Pastorelli, who'll be driving in the second half of the race, are both very, very quick and competent drivers. And at the moment, Montermini leading the way by just under 6 seconds, which means as things even themselves out after the pit stops, the way things stand, it would be Nicky Pastorelli who would come out in the lead of the race. Now though, the double winner this season, Miguel Ramos content to stay in touch with Montermini in second place. Still though, the fight for 5th and 6th rages, and it's Chris van der Drift who remains clear of Bitek teammate Giorgio Pantanov. Is giving Michael Lyons the chance to come back onto their tail, which would suggest that van der Drift and Pantanov have slowed themselves down somewhat on this lap. Again, Giorgio Pantanov shows himself in van der Drift's mirrors, jinks the inside line for Copse Corner. No way through there for Pantanov, although van der Drift then runs a little bit wide on the exit. Doesn't slow him down too much as they head into the very, very fast Maggots, Beckett and Chapel Curve sequence, where the changes of direction really come upon you very quickly, and you actually have to set up for this final section of Beckett's, which is the slowest, a couple of corners beforehand, because otherwise you're carrying too much weight, too much momentum in the car, and that's when you begin to see the errors. All the drivers, though, perfectly piloting it through this time. As Giorgio Pantanov, headlights on, flashing his headlights to Chris van der Drift. I think that means, Chris, I'm quicker than you. Van der Drift agrees, leaves the door to the inside line, and Giorgio Pantanov gains the place, moves up into 5th position. And now it's the job of van der Drift to ride shotgun behind Pantanov, keep Michael Lyons behind him, as Giorgio sets off to see what he can do about Marco Siegfried's lead in the GTS class, which is 6.5 seconds. Out of club they come. Still Alvaro Barber and Mike Simpson do battle, and now it's Michael Lyons who's got his headlights on, telling Chris van der Drift, I think I'm quicker than you too. Although I suspect that van der Drift is probably going to be more inclined to give the position to teammate Giorgio Pantanov than to AF Courses Michael Lyons. But Lyons has got himself onto terms with van der Drift almost immediately. Michael Lyons, who knows the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit very well, he was saying earlier on, it's such a treat to race here this weekend in front of his home fans, and also at the home of the British Racing Drivers Club, the BRDC, which is a very, very select club. The qualifying criteria really require considerable success in international motorsport, which Michael Lyons is a member. So here's the move again from Giorgio Pantanov on Chris van der Drift. Van der Drift realises that Pantanov's probably got the pace, leaves plenty of space. Pantanov's co-driver Rafael Suzuki and van der Drift's co-driver Luis Razzia watch on. Now, what has Pantanov done about Marco Siegfried's advantage over him? Well, that time around he was fractionally quicker, 0.2 of a second quicker than Siegfried. He'll be looking to bring that gap down ever more steadily. Van der Drift busy defending from Lyons. Mike Simpson, his mirrors are still very full of the Ombre Racing Ferrari of Alvaro Barber. And they've all begun to pair off at the moment, because we've also got the Roman Mavlanov and Lorenzo Bontempelli battle, which is at full chat. There is the Mavlanov-Bontempelli fight. Bontempelli, the Kessel Ferrari, which is the bright red Ferrari with the bright roof, whereas Mavlanov, one of the youngest drivers in the field, Mavlanov, who very early on has made the transition from single-seater to GT racing, and has really been, for me, one of the stars of this season, Roman Mavlanov, because his results hitherto have been particularly impressive, but he just seems to have clicked with the Ferrari 458. He works very, very well with the SMP Chambert's team, and has rapidly established himself as a front runner in the ferociously competitive International GT Open, because the strength of depth in this field is very, very impressive, and really the entry list this weekend is a who's who of international motorsport. So for Mavlanov to be running up where he is, it's a fine performance indeed. The same goes for Mike Simpson in the LNT Ginetta. And the whole thinking behind the entry this weekend, it came from Lawrence Tomlinson, the chairman of Ginetta Cars, and he was saying it's his first race of the season. He just wanted something a little bit low pressure, and instead he's found his car thrust into a fight for the lead of the class. Lovely shot there into the cockpit of the Lorbecourse Ferrari. Andrea Montermini so smooth at the wheel, and that is just perfect technique for a car to be right at the front of the field. Montermini just a single turn into the corner, looks very, very smooth, cool, calm, collected, and that smooth, fast approach means that he has taken the best part of a second out of Miguel Ramos on that last lap. He set the fastest lap of the race. In the process, Andrea Montermini, he now leads by 7.4 seconds. The fight for 6th continues apace, as does the one for 10th position. Just behind them in 12th is Miguel Torrell in the first of the safe file for Mercedes. Torrell, victorious last time out with Renger van der Zande in Jerez. It's going to be a slightly bigger ask for them this time around, not least because they have, as a result of that result, an extra 15 seconds in the pits. So we come up to 20 minutes completed in the race, which means we've only got 8 minutes until the pit window opens, and therefore everything that we've known thus far gets turned on its head, and the race really changes complexion as Lorenzo Bontempelli has made the move on Roman Mavlanov. So Bontempelli climbs up into 10th position. Now he's through. He's really pulling away from Mavlanov very, very rapidly. Out of Stowe comes the experienced Italian racer, a former GTS class champion, and as Mavlanov picks up some damage, yes he has, in front of that Ferrari, looking a little bit second-hand. She'll be able to unpick in time exactly what happened there to Mavlanov, but that is not how a Ferrari 458 rolls out of a showroom. Still, it looks like it's been raced very hard from Mavlanov. Hopefully, the damage isn't going to intrude on the radiator area and cause the car to overheat. About to complete his 10th lap of the race then, Andrea Montermini accelerates out of Luffield. This is the third place car, Diedrich Schitthoff. She shares with Bert Longim, and Schitthoff, last saw him, he had Marco Seefried all over his tail. He's been able to shake off Seefried and is now 4.5 seconds clear of the German. Further back, Alexander Taukenitz, a senior, making the move on Sean Bouth. Goes through at Brooklands. Bouth, though, looks to fight back into Luffield. Schitthoff now 15 seconds off the lead of the race. Ramos in second place is 8 seconds back. Here is the GTS class leader, the Rinaldi Porsche of Marco Seefried. He will shortly hand over to the Russian driver, Vadim Kogai. And Kogai not quite to the same pace as Marco Seefried, but Marco giving Vadim the very, very best opportunity of a good result. Stay right, we've got drive-through penalty for not respecting the track limits, and it goes for Vastislav Maliv, who's had the warning flag, and he is the first driver and hopefully the only driver today to receive that drive-through penalty for not respecting the track limits. Into Stowe corner comes Seefried, and what is Giorgio Pantano doing about Marco Seefried's advantage? He was half a second faster last time around, so he's brought that gap down to just 5.3 seconds now in the fight for GTS honours, and that begins to look ominously good for the Bitech Racing McLaren team, because Rafael Suzuki over a single lap is a fair bit quicker than Vadim Kogai, so this could be an opportunity for Suzuki and Pantano to score their second GTS victory of the season, because the Nürburgring, it was the Bitech McLarens who really swept the board. Chance to enjoy super slow motion coverage of Miguel Ramos in the Corvette. Very, very hot work in the cockpit. The drivers were saying that on the longer runs it's getting up to something like 60 degrees centigrade in the cockpit, and given that they're wearing the fireproof Nomex long johns, then probably a triple layered race suit and a balaclava and a helmet, that is very, very hot indeed, which is why all these drivers work so hard at training when they're not at the circuit. Meanwhile, Chris van der Drift in 6th, able to withstand the pressure from Michael Lyons at the moment. Lyons, somewhat superfluously, has his headlights on, as does Mike Simpson. We've got into, I think it's Kenneth Hare. It is Kenneth Hare in the Seyfarth Mercedes into the pits, and that's a great shame for Kenneth, because this isn't within the pit window, so that would appear to be a problem for the Seyfarth team. Their other car in the hands of Miguel Toril, who leads the GTS Championship by just 4 points over Bontempelli and DeMarco. Seems to circulate in 12th position, so this, in terms of the GTS Championship, if things stay as they are, could swing back in favour of Bontempelli and DeMarco. Into Stowe, the second place man, Miguel Ramos. He is now 9.3 seconds adrift of Andrea Montermini. Oh, we are in for a very, very exciting second half to this race, because it's going to be a real head-to-head between Nicky Pastorelli and Luca Filippi. Pastorelli will take over from Miguel Ramos. It will be Luca Filippi, the former GP2 championship runner-up, who will assume the controls of the Laura Course Ferrari for Andrea Montermini as the fight continues for 6th position. And Mike Simpson is backing himself here to maybe try and make the move on Michael Lyons. I don't think he needs to have his headlights on, though. I'm sure that Lyons is perfectly aware that Mike Simpson is just behind him. Likewise, Chris van der Drift probably is very, very aware that Michael Lyons is in situ. Alvaro Barber is staying attached to this battle before he hands over to Stefano Constantini. So they all accelerate out of club along the Grand Prix straight and into Abbey Corner. We're on the 12th lap of the race. We've got just over 45 minutes remaining, and we are just a couple of moments away from 3 minutes away from the pit window opening. You have to wonder whether or not the AF Course team will bring in Michael Lyons fairly early to hand over to Matteo Beretta, because Lyons would appear to be, in terms of outright pace, just being delayed slightly on the tail of Van der Drift here. They all accelerate down the Wellington Straight once more. And I think the relative pace of this quartet is evidenced by the fact that Lorenzo Bontempelli is just beginning to inch up onto their tail. Through Brooklands, they kick up the dust, run over the curbs, and again into Luffield. All concertina up under braking. The invisible elastic between the cars shortens and then extends again as they accelerate through the very, very quick Woodcote corner, which on television sometimes doesn't appear to be much more than a straightforward curve, but it's actually a little bit tighter than you might think, and the drivers do have to work at Woodcote, particularly as it then sets them up for the ultra-fast Copse corner as Simpson bounces over the curbs. And one of the challenges for Copse is that actually the racing line there is just ever so slightly flattened on the tarmac from all the Formula One running that's been here at Silverstone. So the track surface isn't quite as even as you might think, and therefore getting the right line for Copse is absolutely crucial. And pick their way through Magnus and Beckett and accelerate along the straight right. We've got two more team managers summoned to race control, and one of them is the team manager of Michael Lyons' car. So team manager from AF Course, Michael Lyons, summoned to race control as Barber thinks about the move on Mike Simpson into Stowe corner. Simpson though braking nice and deep. Alvaro Barber not quite able to pick his way past him as they then head into Vale. And the fight for 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th all closes up in itself once more. Pit window opens in 1 minute and 40 seconds, so it's not going to be at the end of this lap, but it will be potentially at the end of the one after Alvaro Barber, of course, who came so close to winning the championship last year in the Valois Aston Martin, shared with Matteo Malicelli, moving into the GTS class this year with Umbra Racing, and Barber really getting to grips now with the Ferrari 458. Seems to suit his smooth driving style. So another lap gets reeled off by Andrea Montermini. He continues his quest to build a suitable buffer over Miguel Ramos. Ramos still yet to come through over the line, as he does now 10.5 seconds back, and that gap goes out by 0.6 of a second over the course of the lap. And this is where pit strategy is going to be absolutely crucial, because Miguel Ramos, the driver, maybe a couple of tenths of a second a lap slower than Nicky Pastorelli. So I wonder whether or not Ramos will come in quite early in the pit window to hand over to Nicky Pastorelli, whereas Andrea Montermini, I'm sure, will probably aim to stay out on track until the team physically drag him in. Third place, Diedrich Schitthoff comfortably in command of that third place. And after the pit stops have all shaken themselves out and the penalties have been applied, it's going to be Bert Longin who'll take over from Diedrich Schitthoff, who by my admittedly very shaky maths will come out as the leader of the race. And that is another dimension to look for. Then we've got Marco Seefried in fourth, and look at the way that Giorgio Pantano is closing on his tail. That gap is down to just 3.3 seconds now, so Pantano has halved it over the last 3 laps or so, and Giorgio Pantano absolutely on the limit. It's a real treat to see him at work when he's in the mood. The car just skittering on the limits of adhesion on the brakes into Stowe. They've got the car of Claudio Zdanovic, which they need to put a lap on. Already he's been lapped by Marco Seefried. That's very, very good driving from Zdanovic. He sees Pantano coming, moves to the inside of the road through Club Corner, doesn't delay Pantano at all. As Giorgio Pantano chasing down Marco Seefried, and already through the first section of the lap he was 0.3 seconds quicker, as the pit window is open for the next 14 minutes. They all must come in for a mandatory minimum of 70 seconds, but then don't forget the race leader, Andrea Montermini, has an additional 45 seconds in the pits. Miguel Ramos has an additional 30 seconds. Diedrich Schitthoff has an additional 15 seconds as Alexander Taukanitz Sr. fires the car off at Beckett's into the tyre wall. And that's a real shame for the Taukanitzers as Jerome Liekamolen takes over from Emilio Teguida in the sole surviving Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. Very, very professional team, the Auto Orlando Sport squad. We have another look at Alexander Taukanitz Sr.'s big moment, and that is a very, very quick place to be getting it wrong. Well over 100 miles an hour. The tyre barrier does its job, cushions the impact, and Taukanitz Sr. may, when the dust cloud has cleared, have sustained race sending damage, and as we predicted, into the pits as soon as he possibly could is Miguel Ramos to hand over to Nicky Pastorelli. So Pastorelli, who's been a race winner in FIA GT, also former European Formula 3000 champion going back a decade or so ago, will take over. Who else have we got in the pits? We have got Chris van der Drift, who's in. He hands over to the former GP2 star, Luis Razia, and we have also into the pit lane got Claudio Zdanovic, that's Michele Rugolo, who will assume the keys of the AF Course Ferrari. The second AF Course Ferrari is admittedly an awful lot of work for Michele Rugolo to do. All the while, though, the race leader, Andrea Montermini, presses on as best he can. And Montermini is such a smooth but spectacular driver. Also seeing in is Duncan Cameron. Let's hand over to Matt Griffin. Griffin, who is really one of the finest British GT racers around us, gets very, very tight and contact, and around goes Mario Cordoni. That's Mario Placiuta who taps him, so not so Super Mario for either of them, and it's Cordoni who loses out in the second of the Ombra Racing Ferraris, as still the battle continues between Michael Lyons, Mike Simpson and Alvaro Barber. Here's another look at it. Racing instant, I'll call that, because I'm not sure that Mario Cordoni really gave Mario Placiuta enough space. At the same time, it was optimistic from the Racing Mercedes man. So it's Cordoni who loses out, loses a couple of places. He now circulates in 21st place, but he comes into the pits to hand over to Joel Camathius, and the event Placiuta continues on his way. And this a phase of the race when the order is all jumbled up, as we've got some cars who've made their pit stops, others who haven't, and Alvaro Barber still trying to go wheel to wheel with Mike Simpson. Simpson, though, strong in defence, and he's not driving too defensively here either as Mike Simpson. So will we see any of this trio ducking into the pits? Now is the moment where we'll see them peel off the left of the screen. If they are, nope, they've all decided they're having so much fun scrapping with each other, they're going to continue for at least another lap. Andrea Montermini also deciding not to pit in on this occasion. The drivers who have had their pit stops is Pastorelli, who is the highest of those up the order. So here is Andrea Montermini, and the challenge for Montermini now is that he's just beginning to get into the traffic a little bit, and that causes a problem for him. It's going to be Michele Rugolo, who's his first target in the AF Course Ferrari, which has just come out of the pits, and Rugolo sees him coming into Abbey, gives him plenty of space, and through goes Montermini. There is his co-driver, Luca Filippi, poised, ready and waiting, as they look to make it 9 races in succession that they have finished on the overall race podium. Through the loop and accelerating. Round Aintree corner and down the Wellington straight then goes Andrea Montermini, as we are rapidly approaching half-race distance here at Silverstone, just 2.5 minutes away from that milestone. And I'm very pleased to see Alexander Taukanitsa Sr. has recovered to the pits. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a case of Dad explaining to his son why he's not going to have his fun today, because the AT Racing squad go to work with the Ferrari driver out of the cockpit, stalking away, looking somewhat disconsolate. So while the car was drivable back to the pits, unfortunately, it is a retirement. Now this is very interesting, because the 4th car on that train is the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche of Jerome Bleekemolen, and he's essentially a lap down because he's had his pit stop, as in comes the race leader. So Andrea Montermini comes in just shy of half-race distance to pass the baton on to Luca Filippi. Oh, what a fantastic second half of the race we've got in prospect here. Also in as well is Diedrich Schitthoff. That is for Longin to take over. So out climbs Diedrich. Longin's seat insert goes in because he's a little bit shorter than Diedrich. And then gets strapped in, as does Walter Lechner, who has taken over from Mario Placiuta. Glad to see no damage done to the Lechner Racing Mercedes. Walter Lechner, very experienced driver across European sports car and GT racing, as he gets the thumbs up from the team and rejoins. So in terms of the overall race order, that promotes Marco Seefried essentially to lead the race, as they are coming onto terms with the cars that just emerged from the pit stops. That's James Swift in the car he's sharing with Sean Balfe. the Balfe Motorsport Ferrari, who's been caught by Mike Simpson, Alvaro Barber and Jerome Bleekemolen at the absolute worst moment. Barber trying to find a way past Simpson, and all the while Bleekemolen wants to pass both of them. It's Jerome Bleekemolen who's got the inside line. Alvaro Barber into Stowe, and Barber, well, that's a very, very close shave, and still Bleekemolen draws alongside Alvaro Barber, jinks the left-hand side of the road. That gives him the inside line for Vale, and again Alvaro Barber closes the door. And don't forget, Bleekemolen's essentially a lap down, but he is trying to race himself up the order, whereas Simpson and Barber still doing battle for essentially 4th and 5th now in the race because of the cars ahead having made their pit stops. They've all got their headlights ablaze, and no change in that overall position as we pass half-race distance. Three-way fight accelerates out of Farm and into Village. Still Simpson to the fore, and still you'd say the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche of Jerome Bleekemolen, who is probably the quickest of the three. Let's have another look at this then over the curbs. Alvaro Barber riding up very, very high through Stowe. Probably given his teeth a good rattle if nothing else. Down the Wellington straight. And this has allowed Michael Lanson just to break clear of this little squabble. And then Simpson braking and really slowing the car down through Brooklands, just making sure he blocks off Alvaro Barber. It gives Jerome Bleekemolen the opportunity to get papers width away from the tail of Alvaro Barber as they sprint through Woodcote once more, and Jerome Bleekemolen will be going, oh no, please make your pit stop now because you're slowing me down. And all the while they continue to toss them with good reason, because the co-drivers of both Mike Simpson and Ginetta and Alvaro Barber in the Ombra Ferrari are both a little bit slower than the two out on circuit at the moment, and therefore they want to stay on track as deep into the race as they can, as Bleekemolen goes to move on Barber into Maggot, and he squeezes through. Very, very brave and committed driving from Jerome Bleekemolen. Both of them then ride quite heavily over the curbs, but Bleekemolen gains the track position on Alvaro Barber. It's not a pass for place, essentially gets him onto the same lap as Alvaro Barber, as the battle for the lead to the race has come together, because Marco Seefried and Giorgio Pantano yet to make their pit stops, and the pair of them run nose to tail. So Giorgio Pantano, it's taken him 6 laps or so to close the 6.5 seconds down to Marco Seefried. And still, Jerome Bleekemolen looks to carve his way through this group. This is the fight for 3rd, 4th and 5th, and then Bleekemolen, who's out of sequence, having, unlike the other three, already made his pit stop. The pit window is only open for another 5 minutes or so, because that will close with 28 minutes left in the race. And are we going to see Giorgio Pantano taking the lead of the race away from Marco Seefried? So it's the green Porsche, the Rinaldi car, and Marco Seefried who leads. Second place is the Vitek McLaren of Giorgio Pantano. In terms of those that have made their pit stops, it is Bert Longin who has come out in front of Nicky Pastorelli by 4.7 seconds. And then Luca Filippi is a further 5 seconds back from Pastorelli. They are 7th, 8th and 9th at the moment. We're not seeing them on camera because this is still the battle to lead the race, as these cars are yet to make their pit stop. But of those that have, it is now Bert Longin, number 7, the V8 Racing Corvette, who is the de facto race leader from Nicky Pastorelli, the second of the Corvettes, as Chris van der Drift tails off in the Vitek pit. The sister car, Giorgio Pantano, yet to hand over to Rafael Suzuki. And this is for very good reason, because Rafael Suzuki hadn't done a single flying lap of the Silverstone circuit until qualifying this morning, because he made a mistake in practice on Thursday, crashed the car, no more running on Thursday, blew an engine yesterday, no running yesterday. So Suzuki, I was talking to him earlier, was saying this morning's qualifying was a little bit of a voyage of discovery, whereas Giorgio Pantano knows Silverstone reasonably well, so he'll be keen to stay out on track as late as he can. Likewise, Marco Seefried knows Silverstone an awful lot better than Vadim Kogai, as the Ginetta comes in. Mike Simpson is out, and it's the chairman of Ginetta Cars, Lawrence Tomlinson, who takes over. Tomlinson, who actually made his fortune through older people's homes. That's what his core business was. And as that got increasingly successful, he was allowed to pursue his passion of motorsport, bought the Ginetta Cars mark, and has really grown that from being a very, very small name amongst British sports cars to really one of the foremost British marks you'll see these days. Runs 3 very successful domestic championships and then has cars racing across the world in various international competitions. So Seefried still busy defending from Giorgio Pantano. The pair of them accelerating out of the loop, through Aintree Corner and down the Wellington Straight. And is this going to be Panto's opportunity? He comes so close to losing the tail of the car. He ran wide over that AstroTurf, and that AstroTurf is very, very slippery. And the way that the McLaren fishtailed, it's probably fairly safe to say that Pantano's right foot was absolutely planted on the accelerator as he accelerated through Aintree Corner, around Luffield Bend. The pair of them go, and into the pits heads Marco Seefried. So it's Giorgio Pantano who takes over the lead of the race. Oh, disaster for the Safepath team. And Renke van der Zande pulls the Safepath Mercedes off the road, and that could well sway the lead of the GTS Championship towards Lorenzo Bontempelli and Nicola Di Marco, because it was the co-driver of that Mercedes, Miguel Toro, who was leading championship as Pantano rides the curves at Beckett's. And Giorgio Pantano, you can watch him all day in this mood. He is pushing so hard in the Bitech Racing McLaren as Michael Lyons heads in the AF Course Ferrari, turned over to Matteo Beretta. And it means that Giorgio Pantano is the sole driver in the field who is yet to make his pit stop. So it's going to be the lap after this one, when it's all shuffled itself out, that we'll understand exactly whom is where and what sort of gaps need to be chased down before we can find out who's going to be the winner of the 9th race of the 2013 season. Through Vale and then accelerating into Club is Giorgio Pantano. And he really is at the limit of adhesion. He's trying to close in onto the tail of the Kessel Ferrari of Jan Magnussen, who's just up ahead of him. Another ex-F1 racer, Magnussen. Adventures for Stefano Constantini on his outlap around the outside of Michele Rugolo. So Pantano heads around the loop, and he's going to get into the pit lane with just a hair's breadth before the driver change finishes. It's going to be very, very tight because he's got 40 seconds to get into the pits, and the Bitech Racing team will have either called this to perfection and judged the timing in the way that the Ferrari team did when Michael Schumacher won the British Grand Prix here in the late 1990s in the pit lane, or they will feel a little bit silly. I think it's going to come down to a matter of seconds, because through Luffield heads Giorgio Pantano now and into the pits, and he is, for my money, when he breaks the pit entry beam, which he does now, with 3 seconds to spare in the driver change window. So nicely done from the Bitech team. Rafael Suzuki, the Brazilian co-driver who has done most of his racing in Japan, the Japanese Formula 3 Championship, takes over from Giorgio Pantano. So what does that do to the overall race order? Well, here is the battle for the lead of the Super GT class, and it's between Bert Longin and Nicky Pastorelli. So Pastorelli has reeled in Longin's advantage. The 2 Corvettes to battle for the class lead, and then 5.5 seconds back from them is Luca Filippi. But it's Luca Filippi who is currently the fastest man on track. He's done the best first sector of anybody on this last lap. As Pastorelli will be probably on the radio asking that his teammate Longin doesn't make it too difficult for him to get through at the same time. But Longin did shut off, looking for their first victory of the season. And so Longin, he's got no compulsion or compunction to get out of the way for Nicky Pastorelli. So Pastorelli's going to have to work at this. The risk is they slow themselves down, and that brings Luca Filippi into the mix as well. And this is essentially the battle for the lead of the race as well, because by the time it's all sorted itself out, unless Rafael Suzuki, who's emerged ahead of them, which he doesn't, so Suzuki, there you see him, has come out to the pits in 3rd position, as Longin has to defend from Pastorelli into Maggott. So the fight for the lead has come alive, and it is between the 2 Corvettes, with then Rafael Suzuki and Luca Filippi in particular closing in. And last time around, Filippi in the Villorba Course Ferrari was 2 seconds quicker than the Corvettes in front of him, as Filippi tries to go around the outside of Rafael Suzuki. Through Chapel Curve, they bang wheels. Filippi goes on the grass as they head down the Hanger Straight, but now climbs up into 3rd as the lead of the race goes to Nicky Pastorelli, who slides past Longin on the brakes into Stowe Corner. He's about to come onto terms with Stephen Earl to put a lap on to the former 6-time Ferrari America champion Stephen Earl. Past, oh, there you go, that is to put a lap onto Stephen. Rafael Suzuki, by the way, leads the GTS class after the pit stops from his teammate Luis Razia, and then it's Matteo Beretta in the AF Course Ferrari, who is currently third in the GTS standings. But now, with 25 minutes remaining, the real question is, who is going to be able to prevail here? Is it Nicky Pastorelli or is it Luca Filippi? Pastorelli doesn't make friends with the apex into Village. In fact, he gets Village all wrong on that occasion. He's already pulling clear of teammate Bert Longin, and then we've got the Valour Course Ferrari of Luca Filippi looming ever larger. Filippi should be able to put that lap on Stephen Earl with absolutely no problem at all, accelerating down the Wellington Straight, at the very least on the brakes of the Brooklyn as he goes through now. So we're about to complete the 21st lap of the race, and it is going to be Nicky Pastorelli who leads through to complete that lap, as he and Miguel Ramos set off in pursuit of their third victory of the season. Also had 2 victories this season for Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini. Bert Longin in second position. Eventually, it's only a matter of time before Filippi gets into terms with Longin. The real question is his deficit to Nicky Pastorelli, which has come down considerably. Again, it's down to 3.2 seconds then from first to third. And the big question is then, how quickly can Filippi get past Longin, and then running in clear air, how quickly he can get up towards Nicky Pastorelli, or indeed can he do so? Because at Jerez last time out we were rather robbed of this battle when Archie Hamilton's car caught fire, brought out the red flag at the point at which Luca Filippi and Nicky Pastorelli are about to go wheel to wheel. So the first 3 covered by the length of about a third of the hangar straight, which they all accelerate down now. They hit the brakes into Stowe Corner. You do have to brake very slightly for Stowe Corner. Even the great Ayrton Senna had to brake for Stowe Corner. 1 year in qualifying for the British Grand Prix, Senna decided that he could try and take Stowe flat. The first time he did it, he spun, went back to the pits. The mechanic said, you can't do it flat. Went out again, tried to take it flat, spun again, and then conceded you need to get on the brakes. And in the GT car, there's no question, you do have to just brake ever so slightly. There is Dietrich Schisthoff's father watching on as his son's car, in the hands of Bert Longin, may well be demoted to third in this race very, very shortly by Luca Filippi. In fact, possibly by the time they arrive into Villages, Filippi looks to the outside of Longin. He leaves himself a little bit exposed. He then tries to force his way to the inside line for the loop. Nothing doing there, so he takes the wide line then for the tight apex on the exit, and Luca Filippi pushing very, very hard. And don't forget, all the cars in the International GT Open, they run on a single compound Dunlop tyre, so there's no advantage to be found through the tyres. They've got exactly the same rubber underneath them. It's just about how they use it as Longin squeezes Filippi. Filippi looks to the inside into Brooklands. No way through there. Longin able to defend his position. And this could be decisive in terms of the race overall, because Luca Filippi really needs to find his way past Bert Longin as quickly as he can. The problem being, though, that in a straight line, the Corvette has got a slight advantage, really, over the Ferrari 458. The 458 a little bit more stable through the corners. Excellent all-round package, but it means that Luca Filippi can't pull past on the run down the start and finish straight. Nervous smiles in the Corvette racing pit. They currently run first and second, and Nicky Pastorelli on that last lap did his personal best lap of the race. It meant he was 0.7 of a second quicker than Luca Filippi, who lost a fair amount of time. Settled in behind Bert Longin. One of Filippi's chances this time around along the hangar straight. It's probably 2 or 3 car lengths too far back, really, as he came out of Chapel Curve. Instead, he'll look for a good run through Stowe Corner, and then maybe to the inside line at Vale. Of course, this track Filippi knows very, very well from his GP2 days. Filippi does close up through Stowe Corner and thinks about the move on Longin into Vale. He brakes very deep, very late. Longin sees him coming, gives him just enough room, no more than that. But Luca Filippi couldn't find a way through. Andrea Montermini wipes his brow. This is nerve-wracking stuff, as Filippi is all over the tail of Longin. He's really got the pace through the corners, but Bert knows that if he just plants the car to the inside of the road, there's no way through for Luca Filippi. And all the while, Nicky Pastorelli is rubbing salt in the wounds, because he's just done the best first sector of anybody in the race on this lap. So further pulling clear of Filippi, who is having to reach now very deeply into his bag of tricks to try and find a way past Bert Longin. Dietrich Schisthoff, Longin's co-driver, Andrea Montermini. Gritted teeth, the order of the day for everyone concerned. They, I think, will crack into smiles in 21 minutes' time. For now, though, Filippi continues to be thwarted behind Longin, and Pastorelli is going to take, I would venture, 2 or so seconds further advantage on Luca Filippi on this lap, because he was 1.5 seconds quicker than Filippi through the first 2 sectors. So over the line, completing lap 23, goes Nicky Pastorelli, does his personal best lap of the race. And yes, he was 1.9 seconds quicker than Luca Filippi, which means that Filippi's now 5.7 seconds back from Pastorelli and continuing to be very, very well acquainted with Bert Longin's rear spoiler, which he's been very close to for the last 3 laps, but not been able to find a way past. In terms of the GTS class, by the way, it's still Rafael Suzuki, who leads a Bitech McLaren clean sweeps. It's Luis Razzi who's second in the GTS class, with Nicola DeMarco third, and that may well be enough to give DeMarco and Bontempelli the lead of the GTS Championship. Is down the hanger straight, and Filippi this time's got the inside line for Stowe corner, and surely he's going to go through. He's going to break deeper than Longin, and he takes second place away from Bert Longin. So Luca Filippi moves into second place in the Villorba course Ferrari. His exam question is now trying to close down 5.7 seconds over Nicky Pastorelli with 20 minutes of racing remaining here at Silverstone. And there is the gap between the pair of them, the length of the Grand Prix straight. And this second sector is going to be our first hint as to who is quicker between Pastorelli and Filippi. Here's another look at the move. And Pastorelli got the run through Becketson Chapel, drew alongside, took the place away from Longin, winning him a round of applause from the Villorba course team. So out of the loop, accelerating trajectory corner, comes the second and third place cars. Right, the middle sector for Nicky Pastorelli was a 63.5. The middle sector for Luca Filippi was a 63.2, so he was 0.3 of a second quicker immediately after being released into clear air. So at the end of this lap, we'll see what sort of advantage Pastorelli has got over Filippi, as Filippi runs wide over the curbs on the exit of Luffield, accelerating through Woodcote corner. And Luca Filippi flashes across the line now, and he matches the lap time of Nicky Pastorelli. They did an identical time through sector 3 to the nearest 10th of a second. This is now going to be a little bit of a game of shadow boxing. For Bert Longin, though, no such concerns for third place. He's almost 10 seconds clear of Rafael Suzuki, and Rafael Suzuki under no particular pressure either from Luis Razia. The battle, though, that could be coming together is the one for third in the GTS class, because Nicola DeMarco is being caught by Matteo Beretta, and Matt Griffin is accelerating through that group as well. Griffin in the AF Course Ferrari is up into 6th position, and Griffin, yes, it's a little bit too much to ask for him to get onto terms with Bert Longin. He should finish 4th in the Super GT class, and he should finish 4th in the race overall, maybe. I think to get right onto tail with Bert Longin is maybe going to be a task too far. Right, through sector 1, Luca Filippi was a 10th of a second quicker than Nicky Pastorelli, and that is not good enough for Luca Filippi. He needs to really be half a second quicker than Pastorelli over the lap, if not a little bit more than that, to give him a fighting chance not only catching Pastorelli, but then finding his way past him. Here is the race leader of the GTS class, Rafael Suzuki. Comfortable leader of the GTS class as well is Suzuki. His teammate Luis Razia, 12.8 seconds behind him. Razia being caught hand over fist by the car that's in 6th place, but runs in the Super GT class, Matt Griffin. Then we've got Nicola DeMarco and Matteo Beretta. They dispute 3rd in the GTS class, and they're only separated by a second or so. Already, you could just see looming large on the tail of Luis Razia, Matt Griffin. Griffin caught him just at the back of the shot there. So Luis Razia, who came within a hair's breadth of being a Formula 1 driver this year, had the deal all linked with Marussia, and then got let down by sponsors at the 11th hour. Instead has found himself a very, very competitive seat with the Bitech Racing team in the McLaren, and has seamlessly adapted to the task of competing as a front runner in the International GT Open. He's about to put a lap on Stephen Earl. Runs in 5th place overall. Accelerates the start-finish line. He may well slide past Earl into Cops Corner. Thinks better of it, and there is Matt Griffin closing in on his tail. So Griffin who's putting together a pretty remarkable stint here. And Matt Griffin is, well, third place could be on here for Griffin because he was 1.5 seconds quicker on that last lap, quicker than Bert Longin. He's only 20 seconds back, but if he continues at that sort of pace, then there is just the possibility that Matt Griffin may get third place in this race. He's certainly going to move up to fifth in fairly short order because Luis Razzia is still bottled up behind the Kessel Ferrari of Stephen Earle, who waves him through now along the hanger straight. Matt Griffin, I suspect, is going to try and put the AF Course Ferrari into the hole in the air, which Luis Razzia has created. He does exactly that. In terms of the battle at the front of the field, Filippi, last time around, was a tenth of a second quicker than Nicky Pastorelli, but in the first sector of this lap has been 0.3 of a second quicker, as now Matt Griffin swarms all over the tail of Luis Razzia, and Griffin looks to the inside of Razzia into club corner. Both of them run out a little bit wide, and Griffin looking anxious to get through because essentially the car he's racing is the third place car of Bert Longin, and he doesn't want to be delayed too much, fighting his way past the Bitech Racing McLarens. Thinks about looking to the inside into Village. Thinks very, very hard about looking to the inside at Village. He's then going to be on the outside for the loop, and through he goes already. So the place gained for Matt Griffin. That moves him up into fifth in the race overall. To give you an indication of Matt Griffin's pedigree, by the way, he used to go wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton back in their Formula Renault days, and frequently out qualified Lewis before Matt made the transition to being really one of the go-to guys in terms of piloting Ferrari very, very quickly in international GT racing. That's no particular concern, though, for Luis Razzia. He slips down to sixth in the race overall. He still remains second in the GTS class, and more importantly, he remains some way clear of Matteo Beretta, who has moved ahead of Nicola Di Marco. So off camera, Matteo Beretta's gained the place on Nicola Di Marco, so the AF Course Ferrari now moves up into third in the GTS battle. Matt Griffin lights ablaze. 18 seconds is his deficit to Bert Longin. In terms of battle at the lead of the race, the gap has come down off camera because Luca Filippi last time around was 0.7 of a second quicker than Nicky Pastorelli, which begs the question, is Pastorelli asking a little bit too much of his tyres? Because the Corvette, generally speaking, just the construction and power delivery of that car is a little bit more attritional on the Dunlop tyre than the Ferrari 458, which tends to be quite balanced, and that's why you see the Ferrari 458s normally coming on so strongly in the latter stage of the race. The same going for Matt Griffin, and Griffin on a charge through the first sector, which is two long straights connected by the Beggins complex. He's a tenth of a second quicker than Bert Longin. So here is the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli. He arrives into Brooklands, this the end of the 27th lap of the race. We have got just over 12.5 minutes remaining here at Silverstone. And will it be Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos, or Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini, who score their third victory of the season? And this lap has swung in favour of Pastorelli, at least through the first half of it. So he goes through, he does a 2 minutes 2.5, and Filippi's had a wretched final sector. He does a 2 minutes 3.7, and the gap goes back out to over 6 seconds. Miguel Ramos. Wouldn't want to play poker against Ramos, would you? He looks completely unfazed by the ongoing battle out on track, which is just beginning to swing in favour of Nicky Pastorelli. Pastorelli's next concern is putting a lap on Lawrence Tomlinson and Ginetta. That could possibly explain why Filippi's been slow, because he's trying to put a lap onto Walter Lechner in the Mercedes. Lechner in 14th position, Tomlinson and Ginetta in 13th. Neither of them particularly close contact with each other. So through the first sector, and yes, Filippi gives away 0.2 seconds Nicky Pastorelli, but this is going to be the trick with the traffic over the remainder of the race as to who can clear the cars in front with the minimum of delay. At the moment, Pastorelli's got the advantage of clear air. Then when Filippi gets through, he'll have clear air, and it could well be that by that point Pastorelli's on the tail of Lawrence Tomlinson. Out of Farm Curve, hence Pastorelli hits the brakes into Village, and then around the left-hander at the loop. Pastorelli winds up the accelerator now and onto the Wellington Straight. The second sector on the lap, by the way, intermediate 2, comes just towards the end of the Wellington Straight, so it's a very long middle sector of the lap. Pastorelli completes now. He does a 63.4. We wait for 6 seconds or so, and it's a 63.5 for Luca Filippi. So already on this lap, he has given away a further 0.3 of a second to Nicky Pastorelli, but crucially, he's passed Walter Lechner. And now Filippi is really going to have to go for it. And will he be able to catch Pastorelli? It's going to be 6.3 seconds or thereabouts at the end of this lap, with 10 minutes remaining, which really means that Luca Filippi needs to be 1.5 seconds a lap quicker than Nicky Pastorelli between now and the checkered flag, and that could well be far too much to ask. All the while, though, Matt Griffin continues to scythe time out of Raphael Suzuki in 4th position and Bert Longin in 3rd. Lawrence Tomlinson moves aside on the hanger straights. Nicky Pastorelli's not going to have any sort of delay at all, picking his way past Tomlinson. The gap was 6.3 at the line. It is 6.0 at the end of the first sector on this, the 29th lap of the race. So Luca Filippi is coming back at Nicky Pastorelli. He's driven the wheels off that Ferrari to take 0.3 seconds out of Pastorelli through the first sector. That partly could be Pastorelli being slightly distracted on the tail of Lawrence Tomlinson. Through Magnus and Beckett, he's now put the lap on Tomlinson. His next target is Danny Wertmann in another of the V8 Racing Corvettes. There is Luca Filippi, who's going to have the luxury, at least the next lap or so, running in clear air. In terms of the GTS class, by the way, it's still Raphael Suzuki who leads that from Luis Strazia and Matteo Beretta. It's now Jan Magnussen who has come up to 4th in GTS class. Nicola De Marco has rather disappeared from proceedings, so the Kessel Racing Ferrari De Marco off camera has had a problem. So the 2 championship leaders in the GTS class both running into issues. The 3rd place car in the GTS class is Raphael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano, who currently lead the race, and they therefore I think will take over the lead of the GTS class at the checkered flag. In terms of the championship, around Luffield then goes Luca Filippi, who has done the fastest middle sector of anybody in the race so far on this lap. He is doing everything in his power to get back at Nicky Pastorelli. He's going to catch Lawrence Tomlinson, probably through Magnus and Beckett's across the line. They flash, and on that occasion, Filippi was a second quicker than Pastorelli. He brings the gap down to just 5.3 seconds, but he needs more, because with 8.25 minutes left on the clock, they're going to have 4 laps remaining. So it needs to be 1.5 seconds a lap or so for Luca Filippi, and not being held up in traffic. Raphael Suzuki in 4th place commands GTS, and that storming drive from Giorgio Pantano has given the Bitec McLaren very, very best of opportunities after the pit stops, and Raphael Suzuki at the moment is on the cusp of converting that. He may well, though, be passed by Matt Griffin between now and the checkered flag, because Matt Griffin's only 6.5 seconds back, but catching Suzuki at the rate of 2.5 seconds a lap. So Suzuki may well slip to 5th in the race overall, but he will still win the class. Suzuki imminently putting a lap on James Swift in the Balfe Racing McLaren there. At the back of your shot is Matt Griffin, lights ablaze. There, of course, Ferrari propels himself down the hanger straight through Stowe Corner. Griffin, again, very, very smooth at the wheel, looking to race himself up to 4th in the race overall, and also 4th in the Super GT class. Now, with an eye towards tomorrow, doesn't finish on the podium. That means no additional handicap time in the pit stops for Griffin and Cameron, and twice this year they have won the second race of the weekend, so they will fancy their chances maybe of scoring a very popular home victory here at Silverstone in tomorrow's race. Griffin, though, certainly trying very hard, taking advantage of the low-lying curbs that we've got on most of the corners here at Silverstone. There's 1 or 2 corners where there are slightly elevated curbs. For the most part, they are Vallelunga curbs, named after the Italian racing circuit, which first pioneered having low-lying curbs. Down the Wellington Straight, Raphael Suzuki will be very, very gratified to be 14 seconds clear of Luis Strazia, his teammate. And it just has seemed throughout the course of this race that the 65 Bitec Racing McLaren just seems to maybe be a little bit better set up just something with that car is really clicking the way that's not the car of Van der Drift and Luis Razzia. Van der Drift seemed frustrated with the handling of that car and its general performance during his stint, and Luis Razzia hasn't been able to take any time at all out of Rafael Suzuki during the remaining second half of the race. Suzuki, his next task though is to pick his way past James Swift. In terms of the battle for the lead of the race, well, it's down to 4.5 seconds. Luca Filippi last time around was 7/10 quicker than Nicky Pastorelli, which begs the question, what would have happened if Filippi hadn't had those laps where he was slowed slightly on the tail of Volta Lechner? James Swift sees Rafael Suzuki coming, moves clear. So that's not going to delay Suzuki at all, although Swift does give him the line for Stowe Corner. Opportunity to peek into the cockpit of Luis Razzia as he does all that he can with the second place car in the GTS class. It's the sister car which leads the class, as we have got just 4 minutes and 50 seconds of the race remaining here at Silverstone. And the position most likely to switch between now and the checker flag is for fourth place, because Matt Griffin is leaving time out of Rafael Suzuki's advantage down to 3.9 seconds at the end of the last lap. It's going to be potentially substantially less than that at the end of this one, particularly as Suzuki was maybe slightly more delayed behind James Swift than Griffin, who was able to pounce on Swift within just a couple of corners. So the pair of them sprint out of the loop as Nicky Pastorelli puts a lap on Vadim Kogai, turning through Copse Corner. Such is the pace of the Super GT cars that they have now leapt everybody up to the 10th place car of Paul Rosell, because Kogai runs in 11th position in the Rinaldi Racing Porsche. Pastorelli, again, a little bit slower than Filippi last time around, but only by half a second, so the gap still remains over 4 seconds, which is why Miguel Ramos is thinking about practicing a smile anyway. He's not quite there yet in terms of being able to relax for the race victory, because all the while that Filippi's at the wheel, there is the possibility that the Villorba course Ferrari could get on terms with Nicky Pastorelli, as scything through the traffic goes Luca Filippi. Also the pass there for 11th position as Danny Wertmann moves past Vadim Kogai, so the Corvette clambers up to 11th place. Fortunately, the pair of them are some 40 seconds back from the 10th place car of Paul Rosell, so there's no opportunity for Wertmann to climb any higher unless something goes pretty badly wrong for somebody between now and the checkered flag, which is just 3 minutes or so away, which means, depending on the pace of Nicky Pastorelli, Luca Filippi is only going to get 2 more laps at the end of this one. It could even be as little as 1 more lap. It's going to be pretty touch and go here, because they're currently circulating in the 2-minute 2-minute 3 second bracket. As you can see, we've got 2 minutes and 50 seconds left on the clock, so we should, at the end of this lap, go into the penultimate lap of the race. What that means is that Luca Filippi will need to have been a second quicker than Nicky Pastorelli on this lap, and then will need to be 1.5 seconds or so quicker than Nicky Pastorelli on the next 2 laps to stand any sort of chance of passing Pastorelli. Well, he was half a second quicker than Pastorelli through the middle sector, so he's going to take some time out of Pastorelli. He's going to bring the gap down to something in the region of 3.5 seconds with 2 laps remaining. Across the line flashes Pastorelli. In pursuit is Luca Filippi. It is indeed fractionally over 3.5 seconds between the pair of them, because they set identical times through the first and third sectors on that last lap. It was only through the middle sector where Filippi was faster than Pastorelli, but it means that Pastorelli is going to have to still work very hard. He cannot afford to back off the pace here as he accelerates out to Chapel Curve. The 33rd time of asking. We're on course for a 34-lap race here around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. They're going to break the first intermediate point when they arrive on the brakes into Stowe Corner. It's a 36.6 for Pastorelli. It is a 36.6 for Luca Filippi. So absolutely nothing to choose between the pair of them, as they then head out of Stowe into the heavy braking zone for Vale. This is the section of the circuit that really favours the balance of the Ferrari 458, but Filippi may be pushing a little bit too hard then. He just seemed to miss the apex of the first section of the Vale. He looks to recover that somewhat through club, but he's certainly not making any particularly great inroads into Nicky Pastorelli's advantage on this, the penultimate lap of the race. Through Abbey, the pair of them come. Already, though, out of farm, is Nicky Pastorelli. He hits the brakes and perfectly collects the apex at Village Corner. He then just needs to get a good run through the loop before he can unwind the Corvette along the Wellington Straight, and that is exactly what he does now. Filippi closing in, but this, well, we'll see what the sector time says, but visually it doesn't appear to have been a particularly clean lap this from Luca Filippi. He was maybe a little bit ragged on a couple of occasions, including the Exeter Village then. So second sector completed now for Pastorelli. It's a 63.8 and it's a 63.5 for Luca Filippi, so he was quicker, but not by anywhere near enough. And with 20 seconds on the race clock, Nicky Pastorelli accelerates Woodcote through Woodcote for the penultimate time. Luca Filippi in pursuit, but it, barring a disaster for Nicky Pastorelli on this last lap of the race, is going to be a forlorn pursuit because the gap comes down to just 3.2 seconds. Matt Griffin, off camera by the way, has passed Rafael Suzuki. He is now up into fourth position, but is 17 seconds back from Bert Longin, so there's absolutely no opportunity for Matt Griffin to move any further up the order. And this has been haven't really seen much of him, but Bert Longin has driven very, very well alongside Dietrich Schüthoff to bring that car home in third place, provided they make it to the checker flag. For the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli, that is something like 2.5 miles away now as he reaches the furthest extremity of the Silverstone circuit at Stowe Corner. In fact, you cross over the county line from Northamptonshire to Buckinghamshire somewhere down the Hanger Straight, and then repass it just as you go past the wing, heading back towards the pit area. Nicky Pastorelli hours through Club Corner, along the grid hatchings for the Grand Prix cars, and then into Abbey. Such an exhilarating sequence of corners. Abbey and Farm really add to the Silverstone Grand Prix track. Have to work the drivers very, very hard. Then onto the brakes into Village, and now Nicky Pastorelli can surely see, at least in his mind's eye, the checker flag looming ahead of him. This will be his third win of the season. He'll be the first triple winner of the season in the International GT Open. Nicky Pastorelli then just a couple of corners away from the checker flag. For Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini in the Valour course team, though, it's going to be 9 podiums on the bounce. They won't have finished off the roster at any point in the 2013 campaign. Pastorelli arrives into Luffield for the final time. He just needs to exit the corner safely, accelerate through Woodcote. The checkered flag is ready and waiting, and the winner of the 9th race, the 2013 International GT Open, is Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette. Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini in the Valour course Ferrari follow through as runners-up, just 2.1 seconds back. Thumbs up from Andrea Montermini, and given they spent 15 seconds longer in the pits than Ramos and Pastorelli, to get within 2 seconds at the line is very impressive. In third place, albeit now slightly distant third place, we await Bert Longin and Dietrich Schüthoff's V8 Racing Corvette. They take the flag and finish in third. Fourth place should go the way, and indeed does go the way, of Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron in the AF Course Ferrari, and then the winner and dominant winner in the GTS class is the first of the Bitech Racing McLarens of Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano, and it's going to be the third clean sweep of the season in the GTS class for the Bitech Racing McLaren squad, because second place in the class goes to Luis Razia and Chris van der Drift, and then third in the GTS running, and it's going to be a very, very popular home podium for Michael Lyons, because it is the AF Course Ferrari he shares with Matteo Beretta, which completes the GTS podium and finishes in 7th position. Celebrations for Ramos and Pastorelli here at Silverstone. They have done exactly what they needed to. They've taken some points out of the championship advantage, Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi, and they've managed the race to perfection. The thinking coming into this weekend was that Silverstone was something of a Corvette circuit, the long straights really giving the Corvette the chance to unwind, and so it's proved to be, with 2 of the Corvettes on the overall race podium, sandwiching in the Valour course Ferrari of Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini. So let's have a look then at the final classification, with victory for Ramos and Pastorelli, second place Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi, and third place Dietrich Schüthoff and Bert Longin, fourth for AF Course, Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. 5th in winning the GTS class for the Bitech Racing McLaren team, Raphael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano. For Chris van der Drift and Luis Razia, their teammates who were 2nd in class. Then Matteo Beretta and Michael Lyons for AF Course Ferrari complete the GTS rostrum. Johnny Larson and Jan Magnussen, super performance for them in Kessel Racing's Ferrari to finish in 8th. Jerome Bleekemolen drove the Orlando Sport Porsche. He shares with Emilio Tegida up to 9th. It was Paul Rosell and Vlanov completed the top 10. Despite the spirited drive from Mike Simpson, Lawrence Tomlinson, they brought the Ginetta G55 home in 15th position. A couple of casualties along the way, in particular a disastrous day for the Seyfarth Racing team, both of their Mercedes retiring. In terms of the championship, Andrea Montermini still leads the way from Luca Filippi, but Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos taking a few points out of their advantage, with then Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin in 4th position. So a hug for Montermini and Filippi, and really there is they know that with the level of pit stop handicap they've got to overcome, it's always going to take quite a feat to get themselves onto the podium. Brian Lavio, one of the promotions team behind Touch GT Open, busy handing out the Dunlop caps to the winners. So we still await in Parc Ferme the race-winning car, but Longin brings his Corvette to a halt. Well, he shares with Dietrich Schitthoff, which did emerge in the lead of the race after the pit stops, but he just couldn't quite hold on. Even so, 3rd position, very impressive. The team opened the door, and probably most importantly for Longin, are there with a couple of bottles of ice water. Nicky Pastorelli stops the race-winning Corvette as Giorgio Pantano goes to congratulate his co-driver Raphael Suzuki on their 2nd victory of the season in the GTS class, building on the win that they had at the Nürburgring. Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos celebrate with the Corvette team. A very entertaining race from the International GT Open on a glorious day here at Silverstone. The sun beating down well over 30 degrees centigrade, and to have had a race run at this intensity, this pace, 70 minutes shows just how fit these drivers are, and also just the levels of commitment and dedication it takes to be a front runner in international GT racing. So Pastorelli, he looks like he's done nothing more than go for a drive along the motorway for the afternoon. Barely even broken sweat. Big smile for Michael Lyons. Very, very pleased for Michael to be on the podium here at Silverstone. He wanted to have a strong showing in his home race, and he and Matteo Beretta are turning into a very potent driver pairing in the AF Course Ferrari, and certainly a pairing that I'd like to see remaining together, possibly even graduating up to Super GT for next season, because they could become championship contenders. Let's have a look at the highlights of the race, and as the lights went green, it was Andrea Montermini who jumped into the immediate advantage from Miguel Ramos. They all swept through Copse Corner. Some very entertaining battles in the early stage of the race, not least the one between Michael Lyons, Mike Simpson and Alvaro Barber. The Bitech McLarens flew in formation until eventually Chris van der Drift had to concede that Giorgio Pantano was a little bit quicker and allowed him through at Stowe Corner. Alexander Taukenitzer Senior, unfortunately a casualty, high speed off at Beckett's. Another incident further back was the spin for Mario Cordoni, who was spun out by Mario Pacetta into the pit window, and it was Ramos Pastorelli who pitted in very, very early. Montermini also reasonably early in, as the battle to lead the race emerged between Giorgio Pantano and Marco Seefried. Pit stops continued to pace, and after the pit stops it was Bert Longin who emerged in the lead from Nicky Pastorelli, Raphael Suzuki and Luca Filippi. This was the move that promoted Filippi in the back of the shot to 3rd, and that promoted Pastorelli into the lead of the race on the brakes into Stowe to the inside of Bert Longin. And that gave Pastorelli a lead that he wouldn't relinquish. Bert Longin then put up a stout defence to try and keep Filippi at bay. Eventually Filippi was able to make a repeat of Pastorelli's move into Stowe Corner and up into 2nd position. Thereafter he tried to chase down with a degree of success Nicky Pastorelli, but Pastorelli was able to hold the advantage through to the checkered flag, and he claimed he and Miguel Ramos' 3rd victory of the season from Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini, with Bert Longin and Diedrich Schitthoff completing the rostrum. First ever race of the International GT Open on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. As the drivers come onto the rostrum, so third place we've got Longin, Schitthoff. Second place, a jubilant Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi. And then our race winners, Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli, with the winning team being V8 Racing. So the representative from the team comes onto the rostrum. Drivers then take a pause to the national anthems. The Dutch national anthem then in honour of the winning team, V8 Racing. So we move on to the presentation of the trophies. So for third place, Longin, Diedrich Schitthoff. The runner-up trophies for Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini. You're now getting a very, very large collection of trophies from the 2013 season. And then our race winners, Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. Big smile from Ramos, the same from Pastorelli. Job done for the pair of them here at Silverstone and for V8 Racing. And now the trophies have been presented. They will maybe post some photos, but more likely make merry with the champagne on the rostrum. Montermini first to douse the large crowd that's gathered at the foot of the podium here. The rest of the drivers all celebrate on the rostrum. Fantastic race and all very, very richly deserved podium finishes. One of the beauties of the International GT Open is that the entire pit lane congregates underneath the podium at the end of each and every race. It's always a very celebratory atmosphere. It's now that the hard work the day is done, time to pose for the photos. Thumbs up from the mechanics in pit road. Take the opportunity to have a look then, super slow motion, the cars that made it to the rostrum. And the key for all of them has just been to drive smoothly and consistently, but push as hard as they possibly could. In the case of Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi, once again, exceptional performance in the Vallorba course Ferrari. The same goes for Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette, which once more was victorious for the pair of them. And certainly, should any problems befall Filippi and Montermini, then Ramos and Pastorelli will be very much in the hunt. They really are only as adrift as they are because of a wretched first round at Paul Ricard, where the Corvettes just didn't like the wet weather. Moving on to the GTS class podium, and in third place, Matteo Beretta and Michael Lyons. Second place, the first in the Bitech Racing McLaren, driver pairings of Louis Strazia and Chris van der Drift. And then our GTS class winners, Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki, again for Bitech Racing McLaren. Brazilian flags on the rostrum, Bitech Racing being the winning team. So the Italian national anthem in honour of the Bitech Racing team. And now on to the presentation of the trophies. Starting with those for the third place pairing. And then the smiles from Van der Drift and Luis Razzia, today's GTS class runners-up. And Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano, who may well, as a result of that drive, have taken over as the leaders in the GTS Championship. And for Vitek Racing, the winning team's trophy as well. Photos posed. Now it's time for the champagne. We will say goodbye from Silverstone. Myself, Ben Evans. See you tomorrow.